So you're still waiting for her to change. And maybe you've been waiting for years, hoping she'll go back to the way she was in the beginning of the relationship, back to that sweet, a vulnerable, caring woman that you fell in love with. But here's the truth, that hope is exactly what's keeping you stuck. Because every time things get bad enough, something shifts. She softens. There's a moment of connection and it feels sincere. And you think, this is it. Here's the turning point. But it never lasts. And slowly you start asking, am I the problem? I'm Lise Leblanc, therapist, author, and life coach, and I work almost exclusively with men who've been in relationships with narcissistic women. And in this video, I'll explain why waiting for her to change is a big mistake that's keeping you trapped. And stay till the end because I'll give you 7 practical tips to help you break free. Okay, so at first, this relationship felt real. It felt like you mattered. You felt chosen. You felt seen. You felt like you'd met your soulmate. And what you didn't realize is that the intensity and the connection at the beginning of the relationship is something called idealization, mirroring, or love bombing. And the purpose is to create a powerful emotional attachment that will make it incredibly difficult for you to walk away when the cycle of abuse begins. Because in these types of relationships, the highs are so high, but the lows are just as low. So one night you're having a great evening, you're laughing, things feel easy, she's affectionate, you're connected, and you think, this is awesome, we're good. But then the next day, something small sets her off. Your tone, something you said gets taken the wrong way, something minor that you did without asking permission sets her off, and suddenly you're in an argument that you didn't see coming, and that's completely disproportionate to the situation. And no matter what you say, it gets twisted and used against you. And soon you realize that her needs and feelings are the only thing that matter in this relationship. And you learn that speaking your truth only makes things worse. So you stop explaining yourself. You stay quiet. You back down. You drop your boundaries. Maybe you start apologizing for things that you didn't even do just to calm the storm. And sure, it might work temporarily, but here's what's really happening. You're teaching her that emotional escalation works, and you're teaching yourself that abandoning who you are is the price you have to pay for peace. But the thing is, it never leads to lasting change. It just keeps you stuck hoping because you're thinking if you can just figure things out and say the right thing or do the right thing, maybe just sacrifice a little more of yourself, finally, she'll become the person she used to be. And over time, you start chasing that good version of her, which you'll find that you're seeing less and less of. And that's not an accident. That's what keeps you hooked and chasing and hoping because you experience that good version of her so intensely in the beginning and you still get glimpses of her on occasion, you keep hanging on to that potential. But here's where it gets even more complicated. She makes you believe that you're not getting that good version of her because of something you're doing wrong. It's your tone, it's your words, it's your reaction, it's your character, and you do start to question yourself. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe this really is all my fault. And maybe you try harder, become even more accommodating. You choose your words carefully and you start walking on eggshells, trying to appease her and avoid the next blow up. But here's the truth. The problem is not that you're not trying hard enough. The problem is that you're trying to stabilize something that is inherently unstable. And the more you try, the more you reward her bad behavior and the deeper you get pulled into this cycle. So let me be clear, this isn't love, this is a reward system, and that's what makes it so addictive. It's called intermittent reinforcement. So you don't get steady love or reliability, you get emotional spikes, brief moments of connection that feel real but never last. You get intermittent rewards delivered occasionally, just enough, and just when you're about to give up. And that unpredictability strengthens your attachment. So, for example, let's say she has a blow up right before bed. She's accusing you, threatening to leave, and you go to bed anxious. You can't sleep. You're replaying everything in your mind. Then the next morning, she's calm as though nothing happened. Maybe she even texts you something nice. And just like that, the tension in your nervous system drops, always on her terms. So you feel relief when she's good to you, and you feel anxious when she's being mean. And your brain starts linking her to both the source of your distress and the source of your relief. And that's what keeps you hooked on the cycle. And it's also why logic doesn't work, because logically you do understand. You can see the problems, you can see the patterns, you can list all the reasons that this relationship is not working. You can even say out loud that you need to leave. You know, you would tell anyone you love that they need to leave. So you're not operating on logic anymore. You're operating on emotion, on hope, because your brain has been conditioned to expect those intermittent rewards. And the thing to be clear about is that you're not in a relationship that's improving. You're stuck in a loop that's actually getting worse, not better over time. And what you'll notice is that when things get really bad, just when you're giving up hope, there will be a reset, a moment of connection, temporary calm. But then it all starts up again, just as you start to feel safe and secure. The devaluation, the shaming, and the distancing. So it's not progress, it's repetition. And the more often that cycle repeats, the harder it is to leave. And over time, you start accepting things you never thought you'd accept in a million years, just to avoid the terrible withdrawal symptoms. That's not weakness, that's addiction and adaptation. And what you're adapting to is a dysfunctional system. And the longer you stay in it, the more normalized it becomes. So while you're waiting for her to go back to who you thought she was, what's actually happening is you're slowly becoming someone you don't even recognize. So if you're in this situation, here are 7 quick tips to help you break free. First, stop delaying your decision. Face the reality of the situation head on. Look at the patterns clearly. Write it down and stop waiting for this to make sense, because as long as you're viewing this through the lens of a normal relationship, you will remain confused. Second, stop deluding yourself. Let go of that highlight reel and the fantasy future, all that potential of who she could be, and ask yourself whether you really want to stay in this relationship exactly as it is and why. Because the patterns you see today are the ones you'll live with tomorrow. Third, stop walking on eggshells. Start setting boundaries and reclaim your autonomy and self respect. Define what's acceptable to you in a relationship and evaluate the relationship against those standards. And if you need help with this, read the book Stop Walking on Eggshells. It's an amazing resource. Fourth, when you set your boundaries, expect her to escalate and turn up the heat. She will guilt, blame, and shame you. And this isn't evidence that you're wrong. It's usually proof that the boundaries you're setting are necessary. 5, expect to suffer for a while. The anxiety, the cravings, and the urge to reconnect are withdrawal symptoms from a trauma bond. And regulate your nervous system through therapy, support, and grounding techniques, such as the ones that I linked in the description section below. Sixth, don't let fear, guilt, and obligation dictate your decisions. Covert narcissists often rely on vulnerability to keep you emotionally hooked. So when she cries, collapses, or portrays herself as an innocent and fragile victim, you may feel responsible for her well being. You may feel like you have to come in and save her again. But that's not love, it's emotional leverage again. 7, plan your exit strategically. If you're with a covert narcissist, you should prepare for retaliation, legal battles, financial consequences, or attempts to turn other people against you. Seek legal advice, document everything, protect your finances and digital files, and work with a coach or therapist who specializes in narcissistic abuse. Getting your freedom back isn't going to be easy, but staying will cost you far more. So if you've been waiting for her to change, hoping that one day things will go back to the way they were, or believing that some ideal future is waiting if you can just become a better man, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not the problem. No amount of self sacrifice will turn dysfunction into love. And you can't get love from someone who is unable to give it. And you can't build stability with someone who thrives on instability. So, if you've been experiencing these patterns for years without any real accountability or consistent change, then waiting and hoping for her to change isn't just unrealistic, it's absurd because what you're relying on here is hope, and hope is not a strategy. If this video resonated with you, type clarity in the comment section below. And if you're ready to break free from this toxic cycle, consider my toxic relationship recovery program that I linked in the description section of this video. I'm Lise Leblanc. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.